If you are driving a truck alone at night on a deserted highway, and the same man keeps appearing on the side of the road over and over again, what would you do? Would you ignore him? Or would you stop your truck and ask if he needs help? Tell me in the comments right now. Because on that night in 2011, I almost made the same mistake. That could have been the last mistake of my life. My name is Ray Holloway. And for almost 22 years, I drove trucks across every major highway in the United States. I've seen blizzards and winter storms. I've survived desert heat waves. I've spent thousands of nights behind the wheel. But what I saw near Elk Mountain, Wyoming, I have never been able to forget. This happened in October 2011. I was hauling a frozen beef load from Omaha to Salt Lake City. The load was delayed. That's why I had to leave at night instead of the evening. By the time I crossed Nebraska into Wyoming, the sun was completely gone. The temperature dropped fast. And the wind was so strong it kept pushing my trailer side to side. If you've ever driven I-80 at night, you know how empty that road feels. Miles of darkness. No houses. No towns. Just road. And wind. It was around 11 p.m. I had already passed Laramie. The Elk Mountain area was ahead. There were no trucks in front of me or behind me. Soft country music was playing on the radio. And I was just counting miles. That's when my headlights caught something on the side of the road. A man. He was walking on the right shoulder. But the strange thing was, he was walking against traffic. He had a brown jacket on, an old baseball cap on his head, and one hand raised, like he was signaling me to stop. I passed him. Just for a second I saw his face. And even in that second, I couldn't see it clearly. Like his face was hidden in shadow. I didn't think much of it. Hitchhikers show up sometimes. Even though it was strange at that hour. But still, I kept going. A few seconds later, out of habit, I checked my passenger side mirror. And my heart stopped for a second. There was nothing. The road was empty. Completely empty. I checked again. Then a third time. Nothing. Now the problem was, there was nowhere for him to hide. Open land on both sides. At least half a mile visibility. If he had stepped off the road, I would have seen him. But he disappeared. Like he was never there. I told myself, Ray, you're just tired. You're overthinking it. I drank coffee, turned the radio louder, and kept driving. But about 15 minutes later, he appeared again. Same road. Same direction. Same jacket. Same cap. And the same raised hand. This time a chill went down my spine. Because this was impossible. I had already driven at least 15 miles past him. No human could walk that fast. I passed him again. And the moment I did, I checked the mirror immediately. Empty. He was gone again. Now I was getting uneasy. My hands tightened on the wheel. My eyes kept shifting between the road and the mirrors. Something was not right. Something was seriously not right. Then for the third time, he appeared again. This time about a quarter mile ahead. Standing perfectly still on the shoulder. Hand raised. Like he was waiting for me. Now the fear turned into anger. I thought, enough. Whatever this is, I'm ending it tonight. I turned on my indicator. Reached for the hazard lights. And at that exact moment, my CB radio came alive. Asterisk KRRRRRRR, static asterisk. Then an old voice came through. Slow. Calm. Clear. Don't stop, Ray. My whole body froze. Because that voice said my name. I immediately grabbed the microphone. Who is this? No response. Only static. I asked again. How do you know my name? Silence. Then that long hiss again. Like wind passing through an old broken door. Now I was truly scared. I turned off the flashers. And pressed the accelerator. The truck moved forward. This time I didn't even try to look at the man. I just kept my eyes forward. But as I passed him, I felt it. He was looking at me. Directly at me. His eyes locked through the windshield. And for some reason, I felt like if I looked back at him, something very bad would happen. I didn't look. I just kept driving. 90 miles straight. No stops. No looking back. Around 3 a.m. I reached the Little America truck stop. I parked the truck. Locked the doors. Closed the curtains. But I couldn't sleep. Not all night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him again. Brown jacket. Old cap. Raised hand. In the morning, I went to the diner. An old trucker was sitting there. White beard. Wrinkled face. I sat across from him and told him everything. He listened. Without interrupting. Without smiling. Without reacting. Then he quietly asked, "Brown jacket?" I nodded. "Yes." "Baseball cap?" "Yes." "Hand raised?" "Yes." He put his coffee down and said, "You saw the Elk Mountain Walker." My throat went dry. "You know him?" The old man stayed silent for a few seconds. Then said, "No. But I've heard about him. A lot." And after that, what he told me took away my sleep for months. I looked at that old trucker. There was a strange kind of exhaustion in his eyes. The kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from age alone, but from seeing things the mind can never fully accept. He took a sip of coffee and slowly said, "You're lucky, kid." I stayed silent. He leaned forward and said quietly, "Because the Elk Mountain Walker doesn't show himself to everyone." I asked, "What do you mean?" He looked at me and said, "He shows himself to the ones who are about to stop." I didn't laugh, because there was no joke in his voice. He continued, "I've driven this route for 30 years. And I've heard this story from at least 12 drivers. They all say the same thing. A man on the side of the road. Brown jacket. Hat. And always a raised hand." I interrupted and asked, "And the ones who stopped?" He looked at me. And for the first time there was fear in his eyes. "There are no stories about them. Only missing reports." My heart started racing. I asked quietly, "And the voice?" He immediately replied, "What voice?" I said, "The CB radio voice, the one that said my name." He stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then said, "Yes. That one is always there." He continued, "Sometimes that voice sounds like someone you know. Sometimes like an old driver. And sometimes like your own voice." I tightened my grip on the chair. He went on, "But one thing is always the same. It tries to make you stop." I asked, "Why?" He shrugged. "Because the ones who stop, they don't see morning." In that moment I felt like the diner lights dimmed slightly. Or maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. I asked him, "When did this start?" He stayed quiet for a moment. Then said, "Around 1983. What he told me next was even more terrifying. "There was an old bridge near Elk Mountain," he said. "That night a trucker stopped his rig there. Engine running. Lights on. But the driver wasn't inside." I asked, "Where did he go?" The old man said, "That's the thing nobody knows. About 100 meters from the bridge, another body was found. Brown jacket. Hat. No identification." My throat went dry. He continued, "There was no cause of death for either of them. No injuries. No attack. No heart failures. Nothing. Just two men. One truck. And a night that was never explained." I quietly asked, "So who is the walker?" He looked at me. And what he said next changed everything I thought I knew. "Some people say the first driver is still stuck on that road. And the second driver, he has to stop anyone who goes near it." I didn't laugh. I couldn't even speak. He paid his bill and started walking away. But as he left he said, "If you see him again, never stop." That night I went back to my truck. But I didn't sleep. Every sound sounded like his voice. And I knew this story wasn't over yet. Because next week, I had to take that same route again. And this time, I didn't have an old trucker to warn me anymore. If one night your GPS suddenly turns you onto a road that doesn't even exist on any map, if you are alone at night on a deserted desert highway, and you hear a child crying behind your truck, what would you do? Would you stop and check? Or would you keep going thinking it's just fatigue, just a trick of the mind? I thought the same. And that was my biggest mistake. My name is Carlos Mendez. At that time I was new to trucking. Only 3 years of experience. And I thought I had already figured everything out. But desert nights can change the thinking of even the most experienced driver. This happened in the summer of 2015. I was hauling a dry van from Fontana, California to Phoenix. It was nighttime, and I was on that stretch of I-10, where there are no cities, no lights, just sand, wind, and a long straight highway. I had only one companion, a Mexican radio station playing old songs, the same ones my grandfather used to listen to, and a half-finished energy drink. It was around 12:40 a.m. I noticed there were no trucks around, just me and the road ahead. Then I heard something. Crying. A child crying. At first I ignored it. I thought maybe it was a radio glitch. But then, the sound came again. And this time, clearer and closer. I turned off the music. Now it was only that sound. A child. Sobbing. I looked in the mirror. No vehicles. No lights. Nothing. I whispered, "This is impossible." But the crying didn't stop. It got louder. Now the sound was coming from behind my truck, like someone was sitting inside the trailer. I slowly reduced speed, and my heart started racing. At that time in the desert there was no wind, just silence. In that crying, I turned on the CB radio. Is anyone there? Can anyone hear me? Only static. And then, the voice came. Slow. Very slow. Stop. I froze. It wasn't the voice of a child. It was the voice of an adult, trying to sound like a child crying. I pressed the accelerator, but the crying didn't stop. Now the sound was even closer. Very close. Like someone was sitting inside my truck. I suddenly hit the brakes and stopped the truck. Everything was dark around me. I opened the door. The hot desert air hit my face. And in that moment, the crying stopped. Complete silence. I stood outside and listened. Nothing. I looked at the trailer, walked back and opened the doors. Everything inside was fine. No one was there. I breathed a sigh of relief. And then, a voice came from my truck cab. Slowly. Now find me. I turned back, and the door locked itself. Locked. I was outside, and the truck started from the inside. Headlights turned on, and the truck slowly started moving forward. I ran. I screamed. But the truck was already gone. On the desert road. And then, it disappeared. Like it dissolved into dust. The next day police found my truck. Engine off. Doors locked. But the driver's seat was empty. I still think about that night. Because the scariest part wasn't the crying. The scariest part was that the child was never there. I still remember that desert night. But now I'm not afraid of that voice. I am afraid of the silence that came after it. The day my truck disappeared. 6 days later I was found outside an old truck stop. I was sitting on the ground, covered in dust. And in my hands I had only one thing. My truck keys. The police asked many questions. Where is the truck? How did you get there? What were you doing alone in the desert? But I had no answers. Because I didn't know myself. How I got there. The strangest part was that there was an audio recording on my phone. I never recorded it. But it had that same sound. A child crying. And then suddenly, my own voice. Very slow. Now I understand. The recording ended there. After that day, I stopped driving at night. But sometimes, when I start my car, I hear that same sound behind me. Very faint. Very far away. Crying. And now I know. That child was never inside the truck. It was always behind me. And maybe it still is. If you watch the story till the end, remember one thing. Some voices are not meant to ask for help. They are meant to stop you. And sometimes, the thing calling you never wants you to survive. If you like this story, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel bell, and comment. I will never drive alone at night. Because in the next story, maybe your own voice will call you. Would you follow it? Or would you stop immediately and turn back? Because on that night in 2014, the road I saw was gone from the world by the next day. My name is Earl Whitfield, and I've been driving flatbed trucks for the past 15 years. I've seen snow in the mountains, heat waves in the deserts, and roads so old they feel like they're covered in layers of time itself. But that night in West Virginia, the road itself changed. This happened in October 2014. I was hauling a heavy machine from Birmingham toward West Virginia. The load was heavy, and the route was mountainous. My GPS kept recalculating, but I didn't pay much attention. That's normal in the mountains. Around 9 p.m., I reached an area where the signal was almost gone. The radio was nothing but faint static. And all around me, dense forest. So dense you couldn't even see the sky properly. Then my GPS suddenly changed the route. Recalculating. And a new route appeared on the screen. A small turn. To the right. But the problem was, that road didn't exist on any of my maps. I looked at the road. And honestly, the road was there. Perfectly visible. Fresh black asphalt. Like it had just been built. No signboards. No name. No markings. I stopped. In the mountains there's a rule. If a road has no name, you don't take it with a truck. I sat there for almost a minute. Engine running. And the wind making strange noises through the trees. Then suddenly, the GPS spoke loudly. Turn right. And something about that voice felt wrong. Like it wasn't a GPS. Like it was a person speaking. I put my hand on the steering wheel. And said, no. And I kept driving straight. As soon as I moved forward, the GPS went crazy. U-turn. 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 Non-stop. Like someone was screaming. I turned off the radio. But the voice didn't stop. Now it was in my head. About 20 miles later, I thought everything was fine. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. But then, I saw it. A flash on the screen. On my GPS. You are 37 miles south of your route. I shook my head. How is that possible? I stopped the truck. And got out. All around me was just forest. No road. No sound. But then I saw something. Tire tracks. Fresh. Recent. Coming from the exact spot where that unknown road had been. I immediately grabbed my camera and turned back. But now, the road was gone. Only trees. I rubbed my eyes. Nothing. Like the road had never existed. I got back into the truck. And stayed there. It was past midnight now. And then, my CB radio turned on by itself. Static. I immediately said, who is this? No response. Then, a voice came. Very slow. Very calm. And what it said kept me awake for years. It said, you left the road. I froze. I asked, who is speaking? But instead of an answer, numbers started coming through. One by one. Slow. Clear. Like someone was reading them out. I wrote those numbers down on an old receipt. Because my hands were shaking. And then, the voice stopped. The next day I went back through that same route. In daylight. I searched for that place. Where the road had been. But there was only forest. No signs. No tire marks. Like no road had ever been built there at all. A few weeks later, I showed those numbers to my son. He works in computer science. He looked at them and went silent. Then he said, Dad, these aren't coordinates. I asked, then what are they? He said quietly, these are dates. But in the future, I tried to laugh, but no sound came out. Even today, I still think about that road. Because the scariest part wasn't that it disappeared. The scariest part is this: that the road knew me. And maybe it still does.